Paul writes that when the Gentile, who did not have the law, did what the law required, they showed that the law was written upon their hearts. They didn't have these laws. I mean, the Gentile nations were sacrificing babies, burning them to Baal, right? And they're doing these wicked, evil things. And God's saying when they know these right things to do and they do these things that are in the law without having the law, they don't know the law, but they do these things. And again, he's not talking about the ceremonials or the civil laws. He's not talking about them not mixing fabrics, which was about holiness. It was about purification, not about like something that made the Israelites pure. It was something pointing to something greater, right? And so when the Gentiles do what the law says, they show it's written on their heart. And I would say that from the very beginning, God has placed his moral law on the hearts of all men. That's why Cain knew when he killed his brother, he knew he was wrong for doing so, right? Adam and Eve sin, their eyes are opened to sin. And what do they try to do? They try to hide themselves, right? Because they disobeyed God. He gave a command, they disobeyed it. And so I think it's important. I get it. I know that's one of the objections people often bring up. Maybe we should do a show about the law of God at some point, more detailed, kind of going through some of these things. But Romans 3:20 says this. So when we have this failure to distinguish between the law and the gospel, this is how you get into all kinds of problems. This is what the Judaizers did. They were unable to distinguish between law and gospel. As Christians, we're not called to live lawlessly. We're not called to live in unrepentant sin. We're not called to be unholy. We're called to be holy. We're called to be perfect as he is perfect. We're called to not be lawless, but to live our lives in obedience to Christ. But those things are not the justifications of us being made right with God. It is the outworking of the love of God that is in display in the world when the Father sends his Son to die on the cross, and his Son dies on the cross, demonstrating his love for us. And then while we were yet sinners, he died on that cross for us. And that outflowing of that love, then that is in us because Christ comes and abides within us. We abide with him. He is with us. And then therefore it is a outflowing of that love that we have for God, that when we hear God's word speaking to our hearts, we then walk in obedience or walk in uprightness, not in our own strength, but in the Spirit who, through him, I can do all things, through the Spirit of God that is indwelling us.